reason that we're asking these questions, and there's a poll that's gonna come up, but the reason that we're asking is because we want to know exactly who we're speaking to. So this is something that we're going to kind of facilitate, but this is not a discussion. This is not us speaking at you or telling you what you should do. This is more of an open conversation of what we can do together to collaborate and to help our students. I was talking to Adrian about this. Basically, I truly believe, High Chula Vista High School, that we do work for these institutions and these schools, but we really do work for the student. Without the students, none of us would be employed. And so we want to do what is best for our students and what is most beneficial to them while we have them in our presence. So Adrian, is that you working on getting
Yeah,
something?
I'm still trying to log in to the poll everywhere. It's so sorry. I may just end up skipping that.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that, please. All right. It's okay. So thank you for everyone. Grossmont High School. Hi, Jessica.
Yeah, so if we can get in the chat again, give us one word that kind of best describes how K-12 and community colleges educators communicate as it relates to serving students. And I want you to just be honest and upfront in terms of how we are or how we're not communicating. I think it's critical. One of the conversations that Stacey and I was having, and some of our colleagues at the K-12 and community colleges, that we're, we feel like we're not doing an effective job, but some of you may be collaborating and communicating with one another. So we want to know how you're doing that. So just giving us one word that would best describe that communication that you're having.
Clunky. I see you, Tracy. Thank you. Clunky. That's a really good word. I never thought of using that word, but.
And who was that mentioned that word clunky?
Tracy.
Hey Tracy, do you want to unmute and kind of share what that means to you?
She said she's gonna try.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and no worries, Tracy, if it doesn't work out for you, but if you can, that would be great.
Any other words that best describe how we communicate with one another?
Kim Tran says, as needed. So we have a lot of people in the space disjointed.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you so much for even just saying clunky. We all kind of have an idea, but thank you so much for trying. So just from the words that we've heard, it's a lot of us in this space. So if you prefer to mute yourself, that would be great as well. But there's a lot of people in this space. And so none of the words that we've heard were too positive. They weren't extremely negative, but in other words, it's basically not really working. So Tracy puts in, we have a positive relationship with our colleges, but we have this, oops, it went away. Good old chat.
Yeah, we have positive relationship.
But we have discovered we have two very different systems. So that's a great way to put it, Tracy. We have two very different systems. And so today it was funny because I was thinking, like, how do I approach this? Am I marketing community college? What am I doing? But really, again, what works for the student? And so we talked about what have you heard about community college? But let's talk about, I feel like we're Adrian, the slide. The why. So let's kind of talk about the why. So community college is doing a phenomenal job. And maybe I'm biased because I am a product of the community college. I am a non-traditional student. There's so much to me. But again, community college was a great foundation for me. I wouldn't have been able to go to four-year institution. I ended up getting a GED to a master's in 5 years. So obviously I wouldn't have really qualified. However, without community college, I would not be where I am today. So It builds community. So we will be going a little bit deeper about building community. And I feel like community is extremely important. When you talk about students overall, everyone wants to fit in for the most part, right? We've seen that with COVID. Some students, some of our own kids have really struggled being kind of secluded. Some students don't mind being secluded, but a lot of students, I don't have the numbers, but I would say the majority of students want to be a part of something, right? And so we believe in building community at the community college. Why am I not moving? Okay, sorry. So we enhance, it enhances student success. So building community enhances student success because for me, it holds you accountable. Maybe if you're in one of our programs that will show you later on, someone might call you. You might get a text. You might get an email. Hey, where you been? What's going on? Is everything okay? So again, it's a community, but it also can make you feel like you belong somewhere, and it can help you become a little bit more successful. So it provides, in the community college, we provide a wraparound service approach in a holistic manner. And we have so many programs that we'll show you about. And again, it gives students a sense of belonging, and everyone wants to fit in somewhere. It helps students save time and money. And we're going to show a little video.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind.
Nothing.
You there, Stacey?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Can you hear it?
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I see.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So thank you for taking that journey with us. We thought that was going to really important and impactful, kind of driving the idea home. But I want you to take a second or two and think about your why. Why are you in education? What is your purpose? What would you like for your students? And instead of putting it in the chat, I know we have a lot of people in here, but you can unmute yourself. You can leave your cameras off, but kind of just, a couple of words about your why, because again, we are here to have an open discussion. We are all educators, just trying to figure out what can we do to come together and make it a better experience for our students or and ourselves at the same time, right? And so can I hear a couple of voices on your why? Please.
Stacey, individuals are automatically muted, but
Okay.
post it in the chat and I can unmute you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, John. So you'll have to put your name in the chat or put something in the chat so that John can unmute you. But again, we would like to hear some voices. We were going to do a poll and a couple of other things. But again, Adrian and I were on our soapbox working, prepping for this. It was already done, but we were just running through and we got excited, which is great for you all. So is there anyone who wants to tell us their why? No? Okay, well, I'll tell you my why, and then Adrian, I'm going to want you to tell them your why. Okay, so my why, my why in education, I caught my own self off guard, but I'll just be real, and I don't know any other way to be. When I started going to school, I never thought. So I never thought I would be this far. I never thought I would be this person. Education wasn't my first choice. And however, it has been the best choice. I wanted to work with women on parole. And I have found full circle that I am able to do amazing work with all types of people. I remember having an instructor at Cuyamaca College, Lizette Herrera, only to find out last week that she works at MiraCosta as well. So when next semester we're going to have coffee, because she was my sociology instructor, and she was beautiful and she was smart and she really cared about us. And I was new to school and I was thinking to myself, gosh, she's an instructor, she's smart, she's beautiful, she's got it all together. And so I never forgot her. And full circle, now we work at the same institution. But I also, I give back. I never forget where I came from. I never forget the struggle of school. I never, in none of my appointments, try to make it seem like I know so much and they don't know anything, even when I teach. My why is basically giving back and just remembering what it's like and really helping students to get to the next level and understand their why and purpose. I am a career counselor now. So I strictly do career counseling for MiraCosta College, but it doesn't change the fact that I still get the tears, I still get the problems, I still get the issues that come along with students that students are experiencing. So I'm still, again, able to do good work. And thank God for MiraCosta, I'm still able to make my position my own. In other words, I am my true authentic self. And I would want that for all my students as well. So with that being said, that is my why. That is what's important to me. And that is why I get up every day and do this. I'm going to turn this over to Adrian.
Well, thank you, Stacey, for sharing that. My why, man, that's a deep question. But where my why stems from is, I grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up in the projects of the East Coast. Shout out to anybody that grew up in Pennsylvania, grew up in the projects. And I attended a school in the East Coast. And if you know about the schools in the East Coast, it's a little different than the West Coast. Most of our schools are housed like we're inside the buildings, you know, whereas here, you know, you could walk out freely, beautiful weather and things of that nature. But on the East Coast, you know, it gets cold. But also in the school that I went to, we had different floors or different levels, right? At the top level was our AP honors students. The next level was college ready, then other students that were just graduating high school. And then we had a basement. And in our basement was for students that were mainly geared for just, you know, working after high school. So I was in the college level honors courses, was a student athlete, and I loved school. Wasn't the strongest student, but I loved school. And in my senior year, I met with the counselor, and my counselor decided that, you know, I may want to get put in this class called Jobs for Pennsylvania Grads. I really didn't know what that class was, but it was going to require that I get taken out of my senior English to be placed into this class. Now, what's interesting about this class is I mentioned the levels. You know, I was like, okay, where's this class at? They said, oh, yeah, it's in the basement. So when I walked into the basement and I walked into class, first of all, I didn't even realize there was classes down there. I knew the cafeteria was down there, but I didn't know there was classes down there. But when I walked into the classroom, everyone looked at me and said, yo, it's Adrean. And then they said, what are you doing here? And these were the people from my neighborhood that I grew up with in the projects. You know, I never realized that I never took classes with a lot of folks from my neighborhood until that day. And I was in that class, and my cousin, Yaki, aka Spooty, you know, if you're from the neighborhood, you know, everybody's got a nickname, Spooty. We call him Spooty because we don't know his real name. But my cousin Spooty, he said, hey, you don't belong down here. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, man, you going to college. And I said, yeah, I told the counselor that too. And he said, but the counselor said, yeah, you know, you're from a single parent home. It's most likely you may not be able to afford school. Little did he know I was already accepted to school. But my cousin Spuddy said, no, you don't belong down here. And literally after the day, I realized like, yeah, I need my senior English in order to graduate and go to college. And so I went home and told my mom what transpired. The next day, she came to the school with me, talked to the principal and the counselor, and said, why did you move him out of the class? We need to move him back. But the aha moment for me was my mom got me back into my English class. And I asked my mom, I said, well, why did they do that? And she goes, well, because of, you know, you fit all the descriptions of a person that wasn't going to go to college. And what I thought about that day is if they did that to me, I wonder how many other people they did that to from my neighborhood and my community that did not have that support. And so my why and why I pursued education and specifically counseling is so that students of color and students from disproportionate impacted communities don't have to deal with that ever again. But the reality is we know our students are still dealing with that. So my why is here. I'm trying to buck the system.
Thank you, Adrean. Does anybody want to give a thumbs up or a hand up if they've experienced something? Because again, this is definitely a silent session, but I know you're with us and you hear us. There's just so many. Kim, thank you, Kim. Kim says yes. And because we work with students, we want to keep in mind these type of stories. And Adrean gave his story, and I'll tell you one. It's not a Stacey story time, but one time I forgot, and I guess I've pushed it out my mind. In the first grade, I went to Catholic school, only little girl of color in the whole class in first grade. And I was talking, and my desk was sat outside the class and put in a dark, long hallway. So I'm well into my 40s and I'm just remembering that. So it's, you know, again, my parents had to come up to the school as well, but, you know, experiences and things that stick with us as students. And then again, looking for that ally, that's someone that can help us in the school and someone who looks out for us. So if you don't get anything else from what we're saying, try to be that for students. Try to be that person that can definitely work with students and they can trust you and know that you have their best interest at heart. Okay, Adrean, take it away.
So, you know, in sharing that story, I ended up going on to the university, and as I shared before, I wasn't the most successful student, and neither was I in my first year of school. And I learned the hard way, unfortunately, and lost my scholarship. And at that point, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and so decided to move to California. And when I moved to California is when I was really exposed to community colleges as a student, and I started off at City and then finished up at Grossmont College. And it was, and I'm gonna be honest with you, at that time, I was like, I'm not going to community college, I'm going back to the university, and little did I know about the community colleges and what the community colleges can provide and what they provide for students. Because I was never in school, in the system, I was never taught about the community college system as a viable option for students. All you heard was college and university, right? Never did I hear about community college. And then coming to California, hearing that we have at the time was 114 community colleges, now 115. I find it amazing in terms of what is being offered at the community college. So I really want us to focus on a little bit and talking about some of the myths of community college. And first by asking, maybe you want to put in the chat, or if you want to share, what are some myths you heard about community colleges you believe are untrue or true? Go ahead and feel free to share that in the chat. I remember some myths I heard. Oh, community college doesn't count. That's probably the biggest one, right? Oh, it doesn't count. It's just, it doesn't mean anything. You can't do anything if you go to community college. You can't really find a career if you go to community college. You really want to start up the university, right? It's for students who are not really good students. It's for students who are not smart, right? Thank you for sharing that, Charles, right?
It's not rigorous.
Yeah.
No one ever leaves with a degree. Mm-hmm. It takes forever to transfer. Thank you, everyone. These are all really, really good.
Right.
Easier than the 4-year.
Yeah, I love that one.
You'll lose motivation. These are all really, really good. Mm-hmm. I've taught a class at the high school, and I was told one student raised her hand and said that her father said, she said in front of everyone, her father said that community college was for dummies. Mm-hmm. So,
and interesting statistics on that across the country, 50% of our students, undergrad students, start at the community college level. Just think about that. We're not talking about California, but we're talking about nationally. 50% of our students start off at the community college level.
So Ashley says it's another, students talk about how it's another level of high school. They'll feel stuck at community college. Thank you, Beatrice. You'll never transfer out. My students are just going to community college. Thank you, Charles. Too many other students from high school will be there. So these are all really, really good comments and statements that we hear from students. And so we've heard them, right? And so it costs less. So thank you. I was a mentor for a peer mentor at EOPS at San Diego State. And I'm here to tell you, my freshman students were all over the place. They struggled so hard, and my transfer students were superb. They had their foundation was already set, and they had it. They had everything they needed to be successful. Although, some of the freshmen dropped out and so forth. And it's not who's better. We're better than them. This is definitely not a conversation about that, but what works for the students. And it can be a 4.0 student can come to community college. And that's the thing, like, oh, so-and-so's university level, so-and-so's community college level. We want to kind of get out of that mindset as well, because there could be all kinds of different reasons that students come to community college, and they won't be there forever if they, meet with the counselor, and we'll kind of talk about some of that stuff. They can be there forever, just like they could be at the university forever. If you don't know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and changing your major a lot can definitely take a long time for any student. So,
and I have 3 high schoolers, and I share my oldest is a senior. He is, ready for the university, but he feels he's not prepared enough because he doesn't know what he really wants to pursue as a career. So his option is the community college. great student, 4.0 student, but he's like, community college is a viable option for him. And I'm glad he's choosing to make that choice. And it's cheaper for me. Let's keep it real. So the deeper question is, why do we believe these myths exist? So if you want to put that in the chat, but one of the things I wanted to point out about the community college and the start of the community college, one of the first community colleges was in Chicago, in Illinois, Joliet Community College. And a lot of community colleges were created with the goal of bringing economic mobility to that area. A lot of cities brought in universities, but the cities that couldn't bring in universities then brought in community colleges. And we know, because we work at the community, for a lot of us that work at the community college, we know it is a great opportunity for students as it relates to, career opportunities and if they want to continue to pursue their education. But one of the interesting things of why these myths still exist is that when the community colleges were created, one of the reasons was when students were finishing up high school and wanted to go to university and there wasn't enough space, the next viable option was to create community colleges. And they created the community colleges initially as a waiting place for students. So students would go to the community college and they would be there and wait their 2 years as they were completing their, undergraduate work. And then when the spots opened at the university, they would transfer, right? Now, in order to go into the community college and be ready for the university, you actually had to be university ready, right? Or college ready, right? So you had to have the college level reading, college level, English, college level math to be ready for the community college, then to transfer into the university, right? But we know through civil rights in the 1960s and after the war and things of that nature, the community college and schools began to open because people needed to change careers, they needed employment, they needed jobs. In order to do that, they needed to get educated. So the community colleges expanded and opened up for all students, for all community members, right? So we have two houses basically for education. You have one thought that says, it's for the students that need to be prepared. You hear that. You hear that from some of our colleagues. You have to be prepared for college. You have to be ready, right? And then you hear the other aspect is like, no, this creates opportunities for students who may not have been prepared or have the opportunity. So the myth still exists because we, even as educators, are still battling as to who should be in college and who should not be in college. Just think about that.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yes. Who is this?
Jordan.
My name's Jordan. Hi.
Yes.
One of the things I was just going to say, honestly, is what I've seen and struggle with is, the California education system as a whole and the dashboard, because they, monitor schools based on how many students are A to G ready. And, you don't have to be A to G to go to community college, even though it's still good to take all of those classes. And so kind of battling between getting kids A to G so they can go to a 4-year if they want to, but also letting them know that community college is a viable option. But then if they know that they don't have to take certain classes to go there, then they might not necessarily want to do IM3, and then they're not the A to G. So again, on the dashboard recording. So I think that a lot of schools struggle with that aspect of all students think they have to be A to G ready. And then that means that they go on to a 4-year when really, the community college is still a really good option, for all the things you mentioned and other things. And so at my site, I kind of struggle with that a little bit of me trying to get students A to G so they have all their options. But if community college is a good fit for them, having them feel confident in that option, that it's where they should be going for whatever it is that they want to be doing.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And Jordan, I want to ask you, because you mentioned struggle. When you mentioned, what do you feel the struggle is? Is the struggle from the students or the struggle from the community, parents, from the administrators? Where's the struggle coming from?
Well, for me personally, as a counselor, I think that from like a counseling perspective, the struggle is trying to get students in that A to G path. And and not from me particularly, but from others I've seen in my school districts, like, and students, the perception that community college is less than 4 year is very real. I also was a high school coach, and I would do, counseling with my players. And I had a few who the community college was the right path for them, and they felt kind of ashamed of it because the other students, were an AP and their counselors, push those kids to do these other classes, and they weren't necessarily being pushed that way. And so just kind of that disconnect for me was a struggle. I think it's also a struggle for students, but just kind of seeing that on both ends.
Yeah, and one of the things when you talk about the disconnect, I think it was someone that mentioned earlier, I think it was somebody said we have two different systems. And we always look at it as two different systems between community college and K-12. And just post, the K-12 system and the college level, we look at it as two separate entities, as rather a continuum. And that's one of the approaches that I take when I work with students in the K-12. Is say, hey, school does not end when you graduate, right? Education does not end when you graduate K-12. Whatever you decide to do, whether it's a community college or the university, is a continuum, right? And so taking that approach and making sure that we share that with parents, sharing that with students, sharing that with our educational system, that this is a continuum. Stacey?
Oh, no, that was great. And also, Jordan, I'm sure you're aware, we also have certificate programs. So not everybody that's, wants to transfer and so forth. We also have some amazing programs. All community colleges do, to where they can take certificate programs cheaper than some of the other places. And so that's always an option. But thank you so much for unmuting yourself. Go ahead.
And one of the things that I share, I always love sharing this example. I had a student about 6 years ago that was a transfer student. And this transfer student actually, and he had a brother who actually was at, I believe, at Yale. This transfer student I was working with was going to Harvard. And it was interesting. He started his first 2 years at MiraCosta College, did exceptionally well. That's the reason why he got into Harvard. His brother started 2 years, started at Yale, and went 2 years and didn't do so well, ended up coming back to the community college. The brother actually did really well. Not only transferred to Harvard, but transferred with a degree, right? And he graduated from Harvard. And when he got his job, and they asked him, where did you graduate from? He didn't say MiraCosta. I mean, he did mention MiraCosta College, but they were asking him where he got his bachelor's degree, and he indicated that it was from Harvard. Because most jobs and employers don't care less where you started. They want to know, did you finish? And this student may have started at the community college, but in this case, finished at the university level, right? And even if he decided to stop at the community college level, he started something and completed something. And the community college, just like the university, gives you that opportunity and that option to do that. Okay. Somebody mentioned something in the chat.
Yes, Charles Lopez says the Promise program has really changed the mindset of our students for tuition assistance. I share with my kids that A through G can be met at the community college, and the rigors are just as demanding at the university. It is not where you start, just what Adrian said, it's where you finish, and the connections made along the way. So thank you, Charles, for that. And then I remember being at SDSU and going to the bookstore and then seeing my math book from community college, like kind of on the display, walking up the stairs. And I was like, oh, that's my math book from Cuyamaca College. So here at State, they're teaching the same book, the same material. So, I remember that as well. So we're going to go ahead and go to our next slide, because we want to talk about some of the great things that we have, because we're talking about the, kind of the why we could be a good fit. But here are some of the resources, and community college has a ton of them. And if we read these off and anybody in the community college system feels like we left something out, please feel free to put it in the chat. We try to remember everything. So here are some of the resources offered at the community college system. So there's the EOP program, EOPS, Extended Opportunity Programs and Services, which is usually geared for first generation college students. Next up, or RAFI in some cases. That is for our former foster youth. CalWORK, so California Work Opportunity and Responsibility for Kids program. That is for people who are on county aid. I'm actually going to speak about this. I was a CalWORK's counselor, but when I decided to go to community college, I was new to town and I couldn't get a job. And so I ended up on CalWORKs, and boy, they paid for my books and everything. They're really they really helped me get to where I am today, books, childcare, and so forth. So you have a lot of parents who need that support. Actually, all the programs I've spoke about, there's just people who really, really need the support. And if you were to look up any of these programs, you would see how deep they dive into assistance. And when we talk about holistic and why it's a holistic approach and why it's important, these programs are definitely helping people. We have our Rising Scholars program. If you remember earlier, I talked about wanting to work with women on parole. I have a criminal justice bachelor's degree, but now I've been afforded the opportunity to teach the career class for our transition program at MiraCosta. So when you talk about full circle and how you don't know how things will work out for you, I'm still going to be doing the work that I've always wanted to do. We have our academic and success equity programs. We call them our ACE programs. So we have our Emoja that focuses and teaches from an African perspective, Amana, which is Asian Pacific Islander, Puente, which is our Latinx population, Uprise, which is our undocumented students, and then our LGBTQIA plus program. So they have these cohorts and these classes and just extra services to support our students. And again, that wraparound, really just grabbing a hold of these students and just helping them and being that motivator, that cheerleader, and building that community.
And some other programs, disabled student services and programs. At MiraCosta, we call it student accessibility services. You know, a lot of the schools throughout the state are really focusing on removing that term disabled students and changing the term. So at MiraCosta, we student accessibility services is now the name, health services. So everything from mental health to, physicals and things of that nature in our health services. VMA, our veteran and military affiliated services for our veterans and those that are dependents. Again, we have articulation agreements with universities and colleges, not just in California, but private, some out of state universities as well. So we can help a smooth transition for students that want to transfer onto the university. Cooperative education, it used to be called cooperative and it was CTE, now it's CE, cooperative education for career opportunities for folks that want to just, as Stacey mentioned before, a certificate, or if they're looking for an associate's degree and focus on career. Guided pathways is a big thing that's happening statewide, is to really help students, really help them with the career pathway before really focusing on kind of the major, is figuring out what they want to do as a career first.
So we also have free tutoring, which I thought was really huge, because when I went to the four-year institution, I realized I had to kind of pay for tutoring, and I was like floored. We have a writing center support. So I don't know if our writing center was 24 hours, but I know they had some late hours since COVID at MiraCosta. They were doing some phenomenal work over there in our writing center. So helping students with their papers, one-on-one or drop-in. We have dual enrollment with the high school. So as I mentioned before, I'm the career counselor. So I actually see a lot of students from high school that come to me, make appointments and kind of just trying to get started on some community college classes. But again, that career component, and hopefully we don't run out of time, I'll be able to talk about it a little bit. We have student clubs, we have our Honor Scholars program, and we actually have study abroad. Many people don't know that for community college, but students do have the opportunity to study abroad as well.
Yeah. And then you can see the other ones, cross enrollment. That's for students that are at the community college. You have a minimum of 6 units. You can also take courses at the university, at the UC or CSU. Athletics, club support, sports, service learning. Stacey will touch on that a little bit. Student government, just like the high school, scholarship and financial aid and career services, which Stacey will touch on a little bit too.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about the guided pathways, and what they're thinking is, or what MiraCosta is focused on is career planning before educational planning. Now, this isn't an easy dive. So for anybody in here who's in the community college, I don't want you to think we have it all together yet, but we're working really, really hard on coming up with the mindset of career planning before educational planning. So so what that looks like is, again, having that conversation and trying to figure out if a student knows exactly what they want to do, and kind of that why. The how and the why is so important. So I do career exploration. As we know, community college can save time and money. So you might say, well, gosh, it's community college. How can they save time? Well, especially if they're doing a career exploration. So again, we do that by, I have another slide, but looking at assessments and different things of that nature, the sooner they have a better idea, the sooner they can get with that academic counselor and kind of map out that plan. You're talking about saving money. Anytime you save time, a lot of times you save money, right? So if you're there, first of all, it's cheaper than going to the university, but not just that. Again, the career component definitely saves time and money. So you want to make sure that your students have something to match their ability. So you might say, well, why are you talking about career right now? Because again, career is not a fun word, I always say, but it's very important. So you can call it whatever you want, but if a student can have an idea of what it is they like or what it is they love, it can really, really just help them stay focused. So others may choose areas and interest and motivation once they lose their interest and motivation once they're employed. So there's something on here about internships and so forth. That's really, really important. As the career counselor for MiraCosta, I see alumni as well. I see people coming back that, don't like what they pursued. And it's nothing against MiraCosta. They've never seen a career counselor and they haven't had any career exploration in some of their classes. And we're working really hard to change that. It's going to be a work in progress. And again, I'm not saying that all instructors should have it in their class, but again, when we're talking about what will benefit our students, what can we do to help our students become successful? For the most part, everybody in this space, I'm sure, is pretty successful, but you want to make sure that we set our students up for success as well. I gotta get going. Oops. I want to talk a little bit about occupational segregation really quickly. That in the community college, we are huge on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you talk about equity and you talk about, for me as the career person, everybody who works in the school system should have an idea about, again, just call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be career, because that word I'm finding is like, for not only students, but also faculty and so forth. Like nobody really wants to touch that word. And as the career counselor, I tell my students, I truly understand that it's so unfair that we're having this discussion and you're 17 years old, you're 18 years old, you're 50 years old, and asking you, what do you want to do with the rest? Or you thinking that I'm asking you, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? That is a horrible question. So I try to make it fun. I try to poke and probe. We laugh about it. We talk about it. Students cry about it. It's a tough one. But when you talk about occupational segregation, you talk about equity. So it's when one demographic group is overrepresented or underrepresented among different kinds of works and different types of jobs. That could be gender, right? Female auto mechanics, engineers, computer science majors, right? When you get a female in your college, a computer science major or engineer, it's very rare. But I want to talk about nursing real quick, because there was some data that came out where a lot of registered nurses were white. And a lot of Black and brown people were CNAs and LVNs, which left them in the poverty level, right? And so when we're talking about students, no matter what we think of them, let them know the sky is the limit. I think that's really important. I had an alumni panel come to MiraCosta, and I had a lawyer that I got to speak, and he told me he had a 1 point something in high school. I think it's freshman year or something. And then he ended up going to UC Berkeley, and then he went to law school, and now he's an attorney. So no matter what we think of someone, it is not our responsibility. Oh, I think like Adrean, I think you need to be down in the basement. Like, no, don't do that, because look at Adrean now. I didn't have a GED that was due to family issues, but the point is that look at me now. And so we don't want to stunt our students' growth or mindset. And no matter what their experiences are, let them figure out and give them all the information that you give the 4.0 student. I'm really big about blanketing information. I'm giving everybody information. So that's all my counseling appointments. That's everybody, because I don't think it's fair if I give it to this group and not that group. That is not fair at all. So I'm really big on that. We have 5 minutes. Adrean, did you want to say something before this is my last slide?
Yeah, I guess in the chat too is really, just asking the folks, just focusing on the slide, how can we, work together and find out solutions? Some examples that I give is, what would it take for us as community college counselors to integrate our work with the K-12 system so that we can collaborate, whether it's teaching more classes starting at 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, whether it's having meetings set up with our feeder schools, things of that nature. And it's really just focusing on how can we do a better job communicating and working together. Go ahead, Stacey.
Thanks. So again, Adrean said, how can we work together? So as a counselor, I have that counseling mindset. But again, no matter what your position is, if it's K through 12, ask simple questions to the students. Mm-hmm. Again, my son is 5 years old, coming home talking about he's going to be a paleontologist, and literally wrote something about that. So he's 5. But again, getting those things kind of going, because that can help students have a vision and a goal that can help them, again, become more successful or drive, right? And so simple questions, and these were these little examples, but what's your favorite subject? What's your passion? For our younger students, what's your dream? You know your population, you know who you work with. So say it any way that you want. I'm not here to tell you, but again, just get their little minds going. And if they're in the college system, if you're a counselor, what made you choose that major? Have you taken a class in that area? Have you spoken to an instructor regarding that major? And the reason I have these questions for the college counselors is you will get students who will walk into your office and be extremely confident, even high school students maybe. They'll walk in and just know what they know. But ask them a question about it. Oh, you're a business major. What do you want to do with that? What else can you do with that if that doesn't happen, right away? This and that. If you start to ask the questions, you will find out that a lot of students don't know a lot about what it is they're thinking about pursuing. And so we have some programs on our website, our Career Center and MiraCosta, some free programs. And what can I do with this major? If anybody has access to that program, it's phenomenal, because it helps students expand their mind if they're thinking of a certain area, because as we all know in this world, we don't know what we don't know. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed our presentation. We just have a few minutes. Is there any question? I know, John, you said we had one question. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stacey and Adrean, for your time, knowledge, and compassion that you shared with us today. So yes, we did have one question from Elizabeth Stevens. I see that you did, I'll mention that you already shared some resources, but the ask was if there will be any websites that will be shared, and also wondering how we can continue to bridge the gap for scholars that are in remote areas, such as Mountain Empire, Julian, Borrego Springs, etc.
Adrean, you want to talk about remote areas?
Yeah, some of those areas I mentioned, I think the areas that I heard mentioned, I think those were connected to the Palomar district. I believe I heard someone say, so I would, a recommendation would potentially reach out to the department chair at Palomar or your local, whichever school. I want to say it's Palomar for Borrego Springs, and I can't remember the other areas, but asking, is there outreach opportunities for our schools? Because most of our schools do have outreach, provide outreach to our local K-12 system. So if you don't have an outreach person coming out there, you may want to reach out to the point person or who's usually the department chair in counseling to ask, hey, is there an opportunity to receive some outreach counseling for your school? And then in terms of the websites, we can post some websites and we'll share those as well. But if you go to the California Chancellor's website, you will be able to find some of the resources that are offered at the community college. Or if you go to the specific school in your service area, they usually have a list of programs too as well.
And that pretty much wraps it up. So again, thank you very much, Stacey and Adrian. And for everyone else, sessions will be starting again in another 30 minutes.